Dobbs tonight.
Good evening, everybody. We are coming to you live from the very top of the Chamber of Commerce building in the nation's capital on this, the eve of Donald J. Trump's inauguration as our 45th president. It is a festive and extraordinary atmosphere in this town. The president-elect himself is in Washington today, taking part in a number of ceremonial events ahead of tomorrow's inauguration. Mr. Trump just moments ago addressing supporters at a welcome concert outside the Lincoln Memorial.
We're going to make America great for all of our people, everybody throughout our country. That includes the inner cities, that includes everybody. And we're going to do a special job.
We're counting down now to the inauguration with many of our favorite political analysts, among them Randy Evans, Matt Slapp, Liz Peek, all with us. And tonight, joining us, Trump economic advisor Steve Moore and the leader of Trump's domestic transition team, Ken Blackwell. Republican lawmakers hard at work as well today, just around the corner in the Capitol, trying to get as many of Trump's cabinet members confirmed by the Senate as possible. But those Democrats are, well, they're ornery. They're doing everything they can to slow walk what should be a very straightforward process. Well, there you have it. The battle is on. We'll have the latest on all of that, this political contest that is taking place even as the inaugural pomp and circumstance is underway, leading to the president-elect swearing in tomorrow at noon. President-elect Trump making his official arrival in Washington today on the eve of his inauguration. The president-elect and the future First Lady, Melania Trump, landing at Joint Base Andrews, trading in his luxury 757 aircraft for a considerably more modest military version, a Boeing C-32, part of the fleet of military aircraft that become Air Force One whenever the president is aboard. In a tweet earlier today, Trump said this: "Getting ready to leave for Washington, D.C. The journey begins, and I will be working and fighting very hard to make it a great journey for the American people. I have no doubt that we will, together, make America great again." And this afternoon, Mr. Trump and Vice President-elect Pence participating in the wreath-laying ceremony at the Arlington National Cemetery at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the monument dedicated to service members whose remains have not been identified. And earlier today, Mr. Trump attended the leadership luncheon, bringing together inaugural officials, top Republican leaders in Congress, his nominees for his cabinet, and top members of the new White House team. He made reference to the location of the event, the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C.
What beautiful room this is. Where is this? This is a gorgeous room. A total genius must have been under budget and ahead of schedule.
Well, coming shortly, Mr. Trump, Pence, and other officials scheduled to attend a candlelight dinner with campaign donors. So the pomp and circumstance continuing through the evening. The party is on. And joining me now to talk about the latest, columnist for the Fiscal Times, columnist Liz Peek, Matt Slapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union. Good to have you both with us, and thanks for being with us. Let me start, Liz, with you. This is a remarkable event today. The city is filled with a sense of change, I believe. There is, when you look at the national media, you would think there was a great battle raging between the left and the right, and there is, but it's down that way and then toward the Capitol. In nearly every other quarter of the city, there's an expectation of something much better ahead.
Yeah, there's no question. It's a tremendously exciting atmosphere. I went to the mall this afternoon and watched some of the welcome ceremony, which people were so excited to be there. Literally, a picture of Donald Trump would show up, and they were all on their feet screaming and yelling. It's very exciting. And I think the flip side is that it's a moment of seriousness, and people are, I think, very interested to see what Donald Trump can do. This is a real change in the given order of politics in America. And I think, it's pretty fascinating. I was thinking today, looking back, the first cabinet, after all, was not so dissimilar from what we have now, right? People of distinction, people who had become very successful. Exactly. And all we hear from the Democrats is how terrible all that is. It's like being a billionaire is like a disease you hope you don't catch. You know, it's
I
really kind of amazing. I know, I wouldn't mind, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nor would just about every American. It is the stuff of which the American dream was constructed. That is the opportunity to hit it big, to provide at the very least for children who will have better lives. Under this administration that concludes at noon tomorrow, the Obama administration, that dream has been lost for so many millions of Americans, Matt. And there is the expectancy on the part of this president-elect that he will be able, and as he importantly says, we together will be able to make America great again. This, after hearing in his last official news conference, the president, Mr. Obama, again, first person references 40 times. It's extraordinary. And Mr. Trump, talking in terms of all of us. He is so inclusive in his language and his policies. It's a remarkable change, and I understand this is the honeymoon moment, if there ever were one, for Donald Trump as he prepares to take the oath of office.
Lou, I think it's appropriate that you're down in Washington for this event. I just think it's wonderful, and I think it's just delicious that we're at the top of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I just had to say it one more time for your viewers. Maybe that says it all, that things are changing.
We care about commerce.
Matt is referring to the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable, with whom I've had over the course of the last decade and a half, considerable discussions about and arguments about the proper role and the responsible role for corporate America and the responsibility to protect and to actually propel our middle class and all who aspire to it. And Tom Donahue, who runs this place, being very generous to allow me even in the building. And to all of our faithful viewers, I just want to say I'm wearing my credentials today to reassure everyone. I'm not welcome quite in the nation's capital yet. Here in the swamp, I still need credentials to get in, and may it always be so, at least for me.
That's right. I think, look, everything is being questioned. And what I love about this cabinet that you referred to is that not just Donald Trump, but many of the people he picked in their confirmation hearings and just generally, there are these very fundamental and basic questions which people like me who are political junkies, a lot of people are cynical and saying, why are they asking such basic questions? You know why? Because we've lost our way in almost every conceivable topic. And so if people are asking big questions about, hey, what's the federal government's role in this or that? I love it. And it's long overdue.
I agree.
And overdue. And there was a complete misreading by the Republicans as well as the Democrats in the election of 2016. Most of the Republican orthodoxy and elites were talking about, well, the Republicans had better be embracing illegal immigration. They better get behind free trade at any cost. They better understand that this is a year in which you've got to be a sensitive, caring, rope-a-dope phony. Is basically what they were calling for. And this becomes the year of Donald Trump. If you're talking about delicious irony, that is a wonderful irony, and it's one that Donald Trump exposed and changed the calculus for the next, at least, I believe, the next decade.
I think that's totally true. Can you imagine what the conversation is like in Davos? I keep trying to think about all the people there.
It's going to be boring, I'll tell you that.
It is, but the topics are things like, how did this happen? And I don't think they have anyone there who actually was involved in its happening. They're trying to interpret.
Are there any deplorables at Davos? I
don't think so. I mean, it really is kind of comical, right? They are completely opposed to everything that's going on.
Anthony Scaramucci, I happened to run into him, who is one of the senior advisors to Donald Trump. He was in Davos, met Kirili, the Russian sovereign fund manager. And because of their meeting, immediately the left decided that this was a violation of sanctions against Russia to even have a discussion that may not have amounted to much more than "How are you? I'm fine. How are you, Dmitry?" To quote Dr. Strangelove, one of my favorite movies, in which the president and the premier of the Soviet Union then go about asking each other how they are. I digress. No question about that. But going after Scaramucci because he did this. I mean,
this is hypocrisy.
And I asked Anthony his reaction, and he said, this is the real swamp here, is that this kind of venal, and these are my words, not his, but this venal, mendacious exploitation of a moment for pure ideological and partisan purposes on the part of the left is reprehensible. Yet it persists, and it is an important part of the swamp that's got to be drained.
You can see it, because look at the optimism now rising about business sentiment and consumer sentiment and all that stuff, hitting 9-year, 10-year highs, and yet Donald Trump's personal ratings are not very good. Why? Because the media has not given up on this daily assault on everything.
Look, I've been following politics a long time. Those polls on personal characteristics don't matter. You know what's off the charts? 66%? Donald Trump's approach on the issues.
Yeah.
If he sticks to what he's going to do on the issues, it'll work.
The latest Gallup poll, it's remarkable to see his improvement in each of those elements. And you're right. And I think we should remind everyone, remember, these polls are the same pollsters who were polling into November 8th, and they were dead wrong. They haven't improved that much in this short time. I'm sorry to report, but I do think it's important to note. We're going to talk a little bit more about fake news, but we got to run. Great to see you, Liz. Thanks so much, Matt. Thank you. All the best. Happy inaugural.
Yes,
good to have you here.
Time to celebrate.
I'd love to visit. We're just hours away from President-elect Trump's inauguration, and here in D.C., a massive security operation, of course, has been put in place. Law enforcement officials are taking special precaution ahead of all of these festivities, with several scheduled demonstrations expected as well. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live now with our report. Catherine, this is a very, very big area with hundreds of thousands of people to watch over. Your report.
Well, that's right, Lou. Security is intense because of the protests and a dynamic threat where cars, trucks, and drones can be used as weapons. Tonight, Fox News is the only television network reporting live from the Multi-Agency Communications Center, or MAC, that oversees the entire security operation. I'm just going to step aside so you can take a wider look at the room. You can see the MAC is already up and running and fully operational. And if you look closely, you can see these individual workstations. There are 47, one for each agency that's intimately involved in the security plan. They are literally working side by side, sharing information. And if there is a specific and credible threat or an incident, there's an intelligence surge that comes into this communications center so that key decisions can be made. During this inauguration, there will be a hardened security perimeter. They will be using trucks with salt, sand, and cement. And this is a direct response to these ISIS-inspired terrorist plots in France and more recently Germany, where terrorists used trucks as weapons to mow down civilians. Secret Service has also been doing drills with drones. In this scenario, the drone has been weaponized. It can disperse a chemical agent or an explosive over the crowd. You cannot fly drones in D.C. airspace, and the Secret Service says they have the ability to detect them and bring them down. What concerns you most?
Everything concerns me. It's a constant battle of making sure that we've stayed in front of certainly the intelligence that we hear, but also any new emerging threats that may be out there.
So the MAC is going to be up and running through the very last event for the inauguration on Saturday, when then President Trump returns to the White House, Lou.
Catherine, thank you very much. An extraordinary operation here in the streets as you walk the streets of Washington, D.C. today. Well under control, I assure you. Up next, fireworks today at the confirmation hearings for Donald Trump's cabinet choices. This part of Steve Mnuchin, who is Donald Trump's choice to lead the Treasury Department. This is just a part of what he went through today at his hearing.
Senator Wyden, I've got a Valium pill here that you might want to take before the second round.
That was Senator Pat Roberts admonishing the members of the Senate, especially Ron Wyden, the senator from Oregon, who was getting very exercised in his questioning. We'll be taking that up with Randy Evans here next. We're coming to you live from the nation's capital for Donald Trump's presidential inaugural. Stay with us. We'll be right back with much more. Two more confirmation hearings today for President-elect Trump's cabinet. Steve Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary, former Texas Governor Rick Perry for Secretary of Energy. Mnuchin defended his financial past when pressed by some of the senators whether he took advantage during the home foreclosure crisis. Mnuchin said nothing could be farther from the truth. Perry, meanwhile, sidestepped controversy, or at least tried to, address his 2011 remarks saying he would abolish the Energy Department.
My past statements made over 5 years ago about abolishing the Department of Energy do not reflect my current thinking. In fact, after being briefed on so many of the vital functions of the Department of Energy, I regret recommending its elimination.
Joining me now, former senior advisor to the Newt Gingrich presidential campaign, Randy Evans. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for being here, or having me here.
You've been busy traveling and getting a lot done, I know.
Just a little.
And I'm sure you've been watching every moment of this. I'd say today's festivities all went splendidly.
I think the confirmation proceedings are exceeding every expectation, Lou. Only because the American people are actually getting to hear people talk common sense and say every now and then, "Hey, I changed my mind. I think I heard the data. I now listen to it, and I listened to the merits of the argument." That's why I keep telling you, we're going to see a contrast between the politics of personal destruction, where they go after people personally, and the politics of merit, where people talk about what they actually think.
All right, let me give you a quick repost of that, if I may. I listened to Senator Chuck Schumer, and I think, start his nonsense about a swamp cabinet. I start thinking about, well, maybe pinching his nose or tweaking his ear.
I thought to myself, it's a swamp Senate panel here. When the Democrats decide that they're going to boycott the inauguration, what would that be? I mean, literally, the swamp gets up and leaves.
Yeah,
that's kind of what we're happening here. I mean, they started with partisanship when they passed the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. They end with partisanship, saying they're going to walk out on the inauguration. They have confirmation hearings, which are largely and purely among partisan lines, refusing to actually even listen to the answers.
I want to get. I'm asking my producers now. I'm producing on the air. So, folks, if you would get that soundbite, that exchange between Senator Al Franken and Governor Rick Perry, because it is a priceless moment in the midst of this swamp, as Randy is saying, and the contention, the venality, the mendaciousness of some of these senators as they attack President-elect Trump's nominees. Can we have that? And let me know. Do we have it ready?
All right, Lou.
I got a yes and a no.
Can I say this to you, though? You had to think to yourself, when Donald Trump said, "I'm going to drain the swamp," and you watch the Democrats abandon the inauguration, my God, he is draining the swamp. There they go, right off the stage, right off the inauguration.
Well, we're going to bring them back for a return appearance here. How soon can we have it, folks, if I can ask? So we'll have it here in a... Well, Donald Trump has called CNN fake news, and CNN is under fire for a shocking segment that it aired on an assassination scenario involving the president-elect. The Situation Room, the program hosted by Wolf Blitzer, airing this report from contributor Brian Todd with a headline reading, quote, "Developing now, disaster could put Obama cabinet member in Oval Office." Here's part of it.
Tonight, due to a quirk in America's rules for succession, questions remain about just who would be in charge if an attack hit the incoming president, vice president, and congressional leaders just as the transfer of power is underway. If the president and vice president are killed or incapacitated, next in line is the House Speaker, then the president pro tempore of the Senate. But what if something happened to them at the inauguration, too? After that, it goes down the list of cabinet secretaries, starting with Secretary of State.
And there is, a shameful irony in all of this. CNN has just posted a job advertisement looking for a reporter to cover what they describe as a wave of fake news. We know where much of their coverage, obviously, will take place. Joining me now, Washington Times opinion editor Charlie Hurt, Washington Examiner chief political correspondent Byron York. And let me start, Charlie, with you. I have never seen anything like that, so insensitive, so repugnant. I can't even imagine CNN, no matter the depths of its ideological depravity, stooping to such a low.
Yeah, I consider myself a bit of a connoisseur of bad reporting and reckless reporting and what you might call fake news from established, highly regarded outfits like the New York Times. And I can tell you, I have never in my life seen anything as reckless and stupid and dangerous and misguided as that, and as that CNN report. And I have to say that what's really terrifying about this is it is such an explosive, it's such a dangerous thing that they put out there, that a reporter didn't come up with this. Wolf Blitzer didn't come up with this. This came from the top. That's the only way somebody at CNN could have gotten away with doing this. Because if somebody else had thought of it, Jeff Zucker would have thrown them out of his office and said, "Are you insane?" And so, you can only assume that this must have been Zucker's idea.
What do you think, Byron? Do you think it comes from the top, and what are your personal reactions?
Well, this is something that you have to be really, really careful about. I mean, when you're on television, generally in the news, the idea has been if you talked about the assassination of a president, it was because somebody had been arrested, maybe a plot had been uncovered. There was some actual.
There has to be a premise.
You don't just make it up, and they just made up this entire scenario about this on this inauguration day. We'd have to go back and check and see if they'd ever done something like this before, but it was really extraordinary.
Well, that would only give them a history of poor judgment and reckless conduct. I mean, this is so awful that I can't imagine the board of Time Warner, those executives at Time Warner, tolerating this nonsense. And to your point, Charlie, this is the stuff of which careers should be interrupted. And whoever is responsible for it, and ultimately that has to be Jeff Zucker. He would. This didn't go on the air. I think you're exactly right, Charlie. Without approval.
And remember, the end of the story was somehow the Obama administration would just kind of stay in power if this were to be the case, because we don't have a Republican Secretary of State, which is where the line of succession goes after President, Vice President, Speaker House, and President pro tem of the Senate. That was kind of the end scenario, was that the Obama administration doesn't have to give up power.
Right.
And when I got to that part of the story, I have to say, it made me wonder, well, is CNN in cahoots with Chuck Schumer and Democrats, and that's why they didn't confirm any of his secretaries before now? That sounds preposterous, and I'm embarrassed to even say it, but my goodness, when we're dealing with facts or fake news like this, what are we left to believe?
Well, and the hiring of Valerie Jarrett, daughter, as the Justice Department correspondent, who has never reported before, and specifically they decided, management, that she would be perfect for the Trump Justice Department.
Well, you know that in the past there has been a little bit of a revolving door between political offices and the press, and most of it is Democrats going into the media. Some of them have had great careers, like Tim Russert, who had worked for a Democrat long before he went to NBC. But there may be three examples where that has worked. Well, pick George Stephanopoulos. That's probably the most partisan warrior in the Clinton administration in the beginning of it.
And many would argue that he is also one of the most partisan warriors sitting behind a news desk at a major network. Charlie, you get the last word.
Well, who knows what CNN is up to right now, but it does strike me that it's almost like they're the Democrats in that they're so desperate, they're struggling for relevance, that they're willing to sort of go out there and say anything and do anything just to get attention.
Well, attention they've gotten, and now we'll see what the consequences are. Charlie Hurt, thanks for being with us. Byron York, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good to have you here. Up next, Vice President-elect Pence telling reporters today the transition process came in on time and under budget, with 20% of taxpayer funding going right back to the U.S. Treasury. When's the last time that happened?
He's a businessman that knows how to sharpen his pencil, and I'm very pleased to report today that we were able to do that and restore those dollars to the Treasury.
Trump economics advisor Steve Moore joins us here next. We're live in the nation's capital. Donald J. Trump tomorrow becomes the 45th president of the United States, and there is a direct correlation between that event and our presence here in the swamp. Stay with us. We're coming right back. We're coming to you live tonight from our nation's capital ahead of the inauguration of our 45th president. Mr. Trump wasted no time in draining the swamp. He's looking to cut $10.5 trillion in government spending over the next decade. That, according to a report on the Hill, which says the president-elect and his team are proposing dramatic funding cuts, as well as eliminating programs in a number of departments, including commerce and energy. Well, joining me now, Trump campaign economics advisor Steve Moore. Steve, great to have you here. A great night.
Hello.
A great
day. This is so awesome. Thank you for inviting me on the show. What a view we've got here.
It's our pleasure, and I'll tell you, we couldn't have imagined a year and a half ago that this would be where we would be. Well, we could have imagined.
Or that you have a presidential candidate an incoming president that would want to cut $10 trillion out of the budget over the next 10 years. And that's very possible. It's plausible. It has to be done if we're going to do the.
How about cutting 20% from the government payrolls?
Did you see 1/3 of the federal employees have said that they're going to walk out? So you just got 1/3 right there. It's easy.
You got a bonus of 13%.
Right. But look, this is serious stuff. Republicans want to cut taxes. They want to increase spending on the military and on infrastructure. That means almost everything else, Lou, is going to have to get cut, and it's about time. I mean, there was a report just a couple of months ago by the federal government's own auditors, 165 billion, not million, 165 billion of erroneous and fraudulent payments every year under Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, food stamps.
What would you say?
And no one ever does anything about it.
Well, and it was a few years ago. It was 200 billion was the best estimate.
I guess we've improved a little bit.
So there's an improvement, but it's still 165 billion dollars. And the problem is there isn't a person. I doubt that there are many people, I should say, watching and listening to us here tonight, who don't know that this government doesn't work.
Everyone knows that except the people here.
Well, yeah,
that's been the problem.
Those and all of the folks who are supporting it on K Street.
Yes.
Oops, we're saying this in the.
Right. We're on I Street, so it's right over there.
We're saying that right here on the ceiling.
Well, this will be the test
of the Chamber of Commerce.
This will be the test of Donald Trump, whether he has the mettle and the spine to go after K Street. I've been here for 30 years. Ronald Reagan tried it. He couldn't do it. You know, Bill Clinton tried it. We're talking
about a different fellow.
Oh, that's
I will make you any bet you want at any level. Donald Trump won't back off.
I hope you're right.
There's no I haven't seen any backup in the man whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I think one of the great mysteries here is the number of people in this town who can't figure out one reality about Donald Trump, his personality, his character. To this point, before taking the oath of office, he is working to deliver on his promises. Yes. I mean, you've never seen that.
And you know what
and I include Ronald Reagan, by the way, in that. And no one can be a bigger fan of him.
I'll tell you a quick story. You know, when I was coming over here, all the roads are closed here, so I had to take the metro. And there's so many, thousands and tens of thousands of people around, and people were just coming up to me all over the place. You know, they've seen me on Fox News, and they were embracing me, and they said, "Make sure Donald Trump says what he's going to do." I met this little old lady from Rhode Island. I didn't even know there were Republicans in Rhode Island, and she was so excited, and she said, "We've got to get this done, drain the swamp." So the American people behind Donald Trump, you're right. Sure. He's going to be fighting everybody in this town. You make it sound easier than it is, though, Lou. Well, this is going to be extraordinary. It's like extracting wisdom teeth in this town to cut the budget.
I tell you part of the reason. I don't mean to suggest it's easy at all. But what I do mean to suggest to you and to everyone is Donald Trump is an exceptional leader. He's an exceptional man. And these people, frankly, this is not a fair fight right now. I mean, it really is not. The number of billionaires and friends of Donald Trump who told me, for example, Donald Trump can't do this when he was running for office. I've been friends with him forever, but this is just beyond his too, what this or whatever. Every one of them right now is trying to find out a way to say, "Hey, Don, good to see you, buddy. We've been pals forever." And they're trying
to want something. They want something.
That's exactly it. They're trying to insinuate their way in, and I don't think it's working for them.
I hope you're right about that. When you drain the swamp, that means you have to drain the special interest influence in this town. You have to do it through the tax changes. We want to get rid of the deductions loopholes. You have to do it through the spending. You've got to do it through a lot of these regulations. And by the way, the trade stuff, too. We got all these special interest provisions and the trade provisions. Let's make it a level playing field so everybody is,
Think about where we were a year and a half ago as a country before Donald Trump, a little over a year and a half ago, before he entered the race. He set the agenda, talking about illegal
immigration and trade,
talking about trade in real terms, talking about bringing jobs back. Every one of the hacks in the national left-wing media said, he's full of it, he can't do this.
Not just the left-wing media.
Well, I understand. I was about to start work on the right-wing media as well, who think, well, first of all, most of them are under contract to corporate America. And people need to, but I think he's reignited a spirit that it's going to
I've never seen anything like it. I'm so excited. I want Trump to gallop out of the gates on Monday. I want him to start. There was a rumor that he might start signing these executive orders when he's in a limousine going down Pennsylvania Avenue tomorrow, repealing a lot of these orders that Obama's put in place. And the American people will cheer him if he does that.
I think there is no doubt. And I certainly would be amongst those.
$10 trillion of cuts over 10 years. We haven't seen anything like that. It can be done. Only a businessman who knows how to match revenues with spending, an alien concept in this town, could pull that off.
I agree with you. And it's really funny to see the Chinese move from warning Donald Trump about his exuberance to do the right thing for the American people to maybe we can work it out. We don't want a trade war, to the Europeans who are acknowledging now they don't know what the hell they're doing and are paying stiff penalties for their statism.
Lou, one last real quick. I think he's going to face the stiffest resistance is going to come from a lot of them, the Republicans. They don't want to cut the budget either.
You mean Paul Ryan?
Well, just the
You mean Paul Ryan?
No, I mean just everybody. I'm not naming names here. But Republican and the Senate, they don't want to cut
take care
the
of that
budget.
part.
They say they do, but they don't.
Yeah, I know. But you know what? You can lead a horse to water.
You've got it.
All right.
Got it. This man can.
Steve Moore, it's great to see you.
Luke.
And congratulations. A special evening for you, working so hard to bring policy into line.
I had the time of my life with this guy. He is a different political leader than I've ever seen in my life.
Super. We appreciate everything
Thank
you're
you,
doing. Steve Moore. Well, up next, the U.S. military conducting airstrikes in Libya on President Obama's final day in office. We'll talk about the drastic changes ahead in foreign policy. Ambassador John Bolton joins me next. We're in Washington, D.C. This is our special coverage of Donald Trump's inauguration. It doesn't get much better than that. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Joining me now, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, American Enterprise Institute senior fellow, John Bolton. Great to have you with us. And I mean, as all of this is happening in the nation's capital, it is almost it's so difficult to think of all that the new president will face in the way of challenges in foreign policy, including Russia, including the Islamic State. I want to get your reaction to a number of those issues. And let's begin with the Islamic State, which Barack Obama, and I apologize for the helicopters, but
they're on the way for us.
Well, they're on their way for whoever might want to cross any kind of line here. It's amazing, the security here, and it's deeply reassuring. But striking ISIS on the last day of your presidency in this manner, what's the signal here?
Well, I think it's one more effort by the outgoing administration to try and structure their reputation. If there was information about these targets before, they should have been attacked when the information reached the point where they could make a decision. To wait this late strikes of theater, I hope that's not right. Our people are at risk whenever you go on a mission like that, even with stealth aircraft. And I hope they got their targets. But I agree, it's very